Okay, so we're up to Siman Lamed Beis Sif Lamed Tes. The Shulchan Aruch says Tefillin, Bein Shel Rosh, Bein Shel Yad, the actual boxes themselves. Now, the Tefillin has different components. There's the box, and then there's the base around it that's called the titura and the ma'abarta. So the halacha is that the box itself must be square. Tefillin Shel Rosh, Bein Shel Rosh, Bein Shel Yad, halacha Moshe Sinai, Shu Merubois, B'Tfaron U'Balaksain. It has to be square, both in the stitching and in the mathematics of it. It has to be a square. And by the way, a square, there's dimensions that apparently if it's 1 by 1, then the diagonal would be 1 2/5. The point is it has to be a perfect square. Tzalacha Moshe Sinai. Kidei shelam oisai alaksoin she'amru Chazal kol amsa b'ribua amsa v'trei chum shebalaksoina. It has to be the measurements that, again, if it's 1 by 1, then it's going to be 1 2/5 at a diagonal. Tzalacha l'Moshe Sinai. Says the Mishnah Berurah, v'im loy asim rubois ma'akev b'diavad. And if the tefillin are not square, you're not yotzeh. The boxes themselves have to be square. Now that usually nowadays they're going to be square. You're not going to get them not squared. But conceptually, if they get damaged, they get smushed, they get moved, you have to be careful to make sure that it's a square. And it says the Mishnah Berurah, listen, if you don't have anything else, I would put it on without a bracha. It's better than not wearing tefillin, but you're not. It's a big problem. Now, correct, exactly. Now, in addition, the sewing also has to be straight. Meaning, you can't have like you have a zigzag pattern with the sewing. It has to be straight as well. It says the Mishnah Berurah. It says the Mechaber. Kidei sheyeh lem alaksa in Shamar Chazal, Pirish Biru B'Gomer. That has to be that type of dimensions. Now, okay, so they talk about how you should measure it. Again, people aren't doing this, but conceptually, you should measure it to make sure that it's perfectly square. Now, the Mechaber then continues, V'tzarach l'roi v'amokam eshavan. In addition to the boxes themselves, the titura also has to be a perfect square. Now, let me ask you a question. How is it a perfect square? Hold on. When you take the average Shel Rosh, this box has to be perfectly squared. Then the titura also has to be perfect squared. Now the titura is this part. The titura does not count the part where the strap goes through. That's called the ma'abarta. So you have to make sure that this is perfectly square. Obviously, it can't be perfectly square the way it is. It's a bit of a rectangle the way it is if you include the area of the strap. So how do I make sure that it's perfectly square? So if you notice, that's why they notch in the edges, so that there is a perfect square. The way it's cut is bedafka in this way, so that it does go in a little bit to make room for the strap, but it's also at an angle, because they didn't need to do this. You could have just made it like angular or straight, whatever. They dafka do it so that there's a angle over here, so that if you put your finger over the area that the strap goes through, it's a perfect square. That's why they do it in that way. It says the Mechaber Tzarech Rab Makam Eshavan. The Mechaber says you have to make to straighten out V'gam Habatim. Now the Mishnah Berurah says V'gam Zu Halacha Moshe Sinai. The fact that the titura also has to be a perfect square is Halacha Moshe Sinai. That's Rova Poskim. V'gam Ze Biru Gomer, again, it has to be a perfect square. And he says V'atitura V'hanu Sheyachdech HaMabartim Beit Stadim. That's why they cut away at the Mabarta to make a corners, so that there are 4 corners if you were to remove conceptually the rest of it. You have to be very careful. Again, you're not yotza, so you have to be also careful that those corners also don't get damaged. See, I don't think people think about that. They're so worried about these top 2 corners. These corners also have to stay squared. And again, it's something just to be careful with. It says the Mishnah Berurah, and also you have to be careful with the sewing. You see, again, the way they do it is they etch it in, so it's a little bit easier. But you have to make sure that this is a straight line, because again, if they go in and out a little bit, you're also not going to be yotza. The Mishnah Berurah says, apparently in his time in Europe, ein mashgichim al tefillin shir merubah in kedin. People are not careful in this. Apparently in that day they weren't careful. And even those people that are very frum, they don't really check to see if it's straight. You'll sometimes see older pairs of tefillin where it's like a little curved. It's not Mishnah Berurah says it's not a good thing that they weren't so careful. And it's easy to fix. It's not a big, it's not a big deal. This is very, very easy to fix. The bottom also has to be square. And you see the pictures, not to have it like this, not to have it, like a triangle or a rhombus, not to have it curved in, not to have it circular. The Mishnah Berurah says apparently people used to do it circular at the time also. One more halacha. The Mishnah Berurah says, it has to be straight within the bottom themselves, meaning you can't fill it up with glue or something. Let's say there's it's cut out. You can't just fill it up with some paste or whatever. Now it looks, no. It's got to actually be square within the cloth, within the bottom itself. All right, we'll stop here. We'll pick it up tomorrow, Bez Hashem.